Uh,
All right.
Jack, did you ever book that appointment with the tax lady?
I did not. That's a good point. I'll do that. Um, did you text me that link or email me?
I'll resend it again. I think.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks. I was gonna do it, and then I looked at her schedule and I'm like, let me look at my schedule, and then I freaking forgot to book a follow-up with her. Um, okay. So I guess we can start with just some questions in general, check in with people in terms of how things went this week. If anyone had any specific questions or anything they wanted to share with the outreach and hunting for deals and speaking with agents, we're going to share a creative calculator, like underwriting sheet with you guys. I know we've been talking about that for a while. So we're going to share one of those. And then also too, we're going to go over, I remember on last week's meeting on Tuesday, some people had questions about better dealing with objections. So we will go over some basic questions and objections. And then also to, feel free to share some of the objections that you guys have been dealing with that agents are giving you or sellers. And we could totally cover those and kind of clear some of those up and go over the best ways to answer those objections and move forward and get past those. So yeah, just want to check in though, see if anyone has questions or comments or concerns or anything from this past week.
Um, I was talking to an agent about a property about I think it was Monday or Tuesday, and I was just talking to him about property, and they were mentioned like, yeah, we're interested, or just talking a little more about it, and they mentioned, but we like to avoid any wholesale, so we don't do that. And I was like, oh, I was curious as to why that was. And, they're like, oh, we just don't like to deal with it. So we don't do anything with wholesale, like no assignment. We don't want to insert that in any contracts, anything like that. I didn't really know how to respond to that.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, I understand, if that's just how you feel like you want to operate, that's fine, But yeah, I was just kind of a little taken back by that. I don't know if that's something that you guys have ran into before, of just agents wanting to avoid that altogether or not. But
Yeah.
I was kind of surprised by that.
So the best way to overcome that, we don't get it too often, surprisingly. But the handful of times we do get it, the way to overcome that, well, I'm the end buyer on these 99.9% of the time. I'm the end buyer. Sometimes we bring in funding partners that partner up with us, but regardless, we we don't take title of the property in the entity we go under contract on. We always create a new entity to take title with the property, whether it's my partner and I or one of our funding partners. So we would have to assign it to our new LLC to close on. So technically we're not wholesalers, but we need to have, the ability to assign the contract to our new entity before we close on it. And then every time I've said that, there's never pushback at all. They're just worried about like some newbie wholesaler getting it under contract, trying to daisy chain it, trying to find a buyer, and then they just waste the seller's time and of course their time too, as an agent, right? Because they're getting paid on that and their time of getting commission. They can't have
Right.
the property on market forever, so they don't want to waste time with people that aren't serious or that don't seem like direct buyers. So yeah, just basically stating that you're going to be assigning it to your LLC, a different LLC you create before closing anyway, so it needs to be assignable, then you shouldn't get any pushback from that.
Okay. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. I'll keep that in mind for next time in case I come across that again. That was the first time I had come across something like that, so I
Yeah.
just wasn't really sure. I was like, oh, that's interesting that you would mention specifically that we don't want to deal with any wholesalers. So yeah, I'll keep that in mind for the next time for sure.
Cool. Cool. Any any other questions from anyone else? That was a good one. I'm glad we touched on that because no, I don't think anyone's asked that one yet. And that's the perfect way to overcome it. Just saying you need to assign it to your other entity to close on it.
Hey Jack, it's me, Alani.
Hey Milani, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm good. I
Awesome.
wanted to ask you, so what's the process when dealing with an agent who works with OfferPad? So the agent that I'm speaking about, basically, she's presented a couple of properties that I'm speaking to Alex about, and um, apparently, like, so she works on her own with her broker, but then there are times when she also works with OfferPad. Now, what's the difference in the process when someone is working with OfferPad with regards to things like commissions and stuff like that? Like, what do I have to keep in mind when she's presenting a property from OfferPad and not necessarily from Zillow or Realtor.com or something like that?
Yeah, so honestly, in terms of exact commissions through OfferPad, I'm not 100% sure. I've never bought or sold anything through OfferPad, but I know how OfferPad operates. I'm trying to think, I'm wondering if OfferPad works more of just like a wholesaling firm, Alex. I mean, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I'm scrolling through their website right now. I wonder if they're like a New Western where they get properties under contract from other wholesalers or whoever, sometimes direct to seller, and then they market it out to their investor buyer pool. So they're essentially just wholesaling it and they have a long inspection period. I'm not sure if OfferPad closes on homes themselves and has their own marketplace where they then resell the homes, but I'm pretty sure they're like a New Western where they'll basically just wholesale these houses where they'll get them under contract for long inspections and then assign them to someone else. So maybe she's like almost like a New Western agent where she would get paid like a portion of an assignment or a finder's or like a typical finder's fee, or maybe it's a percentage of agent commission. Do you know how that works, Alex, with OfferPad?
Uh, I don't. I would
Yeah.
I would assume it's something similar to like a New Western model though.
Yeah. And the thing is with that, I'm not sure. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not sure. If it's like a New Western model, they probably wouldn't allow assignments, right? Because they're essentially like wholesaling it themselves and they're trying to find that direct end buyer investor. So my assumption would be that they just want an end buyer for it. And then my other assumption is these probably won't be that good of deals because if they're going through OfferPad, who acquired it from someone off market and then they're trying to sell it, they pretty much just sucked up all this spread there while, pushing it back out at that resale value so they can make a fee off of it. So then for us to try to make a fee off of it as well, I don't think we would be able to dealing with OfferPad. That's just
Certainly, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about with regards to, so where would they get the commissions from? So would it be from the end buyer that they're aiming for, or would
They
it
would-
be still with the seller?
So basically, like with New Western, which I think, like I said, OfferPad, I'm not super familiar with how they work because I've never done business with them, but I'm assuming they're very similar to like New Western, which I've done business with a decent amount of times in terms of like assigning deals to them. But basically, the way the New Western agents get paid, I'm assuming the same with OfferPad, would be I think two options. One, they get a portion of the overall assignment fee. So say if OfferPad gets a property for $100K and then they sell it to an investor of 120, then that agent who was involved there would probably get a portion of that 20K spread on the assignment. Or I'm guessing it could just be a flat fee percentage too of the overall price. Not 100% sure how OfferPad would operate though. That's just my guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
And I would ask them too, if you're speaking with that agent who works for OfferPad, I would ask them and say, are these like, I'm not 100% sure how your business model is and how you operate. Are these like investment properties you guys are getting direct to seller and then just getting under contract to then push out to investors? Or are you guys like closing on these, or what's your system like? Because I think it's like what I described, where I think they're just a wholesaling firm, but they also offer home loans and stuff. So I'm not too sure actually on how they operate.
Okay. No, I'll definitely ask her because I was getting a sense of that like the more you negotiate, the more they're like stuck on a number. But I felt like the number wasn't coming from the seller, but more from them, if that makes sense. Like they've got a number in their minds that they can't go below because of that spread that you just spoke about.
Yeah, that's just like New Western then. So they probably have the exact same model because New Western, they have to make $6,000 a deal. That's like their bare minimum. It changes per office and market though. But I remember like we would try to split fees with New Western and they would tell us, hey, we can't go any lower. We have to make a 6K spread. So that's probably the same case with OfferPad.
Okay. I'll check on that. Okay, thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Anything else from anyone, or if anyone knows, because OfferPad's pretty big. I just haven't dealt with OfferPad. I don't know if anyone's used OfferPad, but Any other questions from anyone else? Any updates or anything going once, going twice before we jump into, if you want to go over that calculator thing you're going to share first, Alex, and then we can touch on the objection stuff.
Yeah, let me pull it up right now.
I do want to bring up one thing really quick. It
Yeah,
was
what's up,
Jack.
Chris?
We were on a call with that agent a while ago who was wanted to let it sit on the market for a little bit, but he said he would have been open to the creative and sub two. Just his broker wasn't really open, and he wanted to explain. And he just took it off the listing got removed yesterday, but I still want to follow up on that possibly because he did say he was.
Let's call him
open
for
to it.
sure. Let's call him for
Yeah.
sure. Let's call him after this meeting, because if it's off market now, they may have terminated their agreement, and then that could be easier to get that agent involved and say, hey, well, now that this agreement's terminated, we can still pay you kind of like a back end finder's fee that wouldn't be connected with your brokerage to limit liability. Because I closed on one like that a couple months ago where we paid them outside of escrow. So that's definitely something we could do.
All right.
Hey, what do you normally charge when you do a deal like that? What do you, pay to an agent when it's just like a little back end fee? Like a
Well, it really just depends on the whole scenario. Like if the sellers are like, we're not getting an action, we just want to take it off the market, we're done with this, and the contract was terminated, and the agent really wasn't going to make anything, then maybe we'll just say, hey, I still want to give you a little something, right? If you connect us here, I'll give you $1,000 or something like that. But it's really dependent on the scenario. Like if there's a big enough spread there, maybe we could give the agent their full 2% commission, or 2.5, 3%, whatever it was. But we'd likely be lower than that, though. If it got pulled off market and the agent's no longer really involved with it, we would definitely want to be lower than their typical commission, and just basically try to seem nice in terms of, hey, we still want to kind of keep you in the loop and get you paid. Or theoretically, we could just skip trace the seller and go direct to seller if we wanted to. But on this one, since we already spoke with the agent and he seemed open to it, that agent's going to be a source of knowledge for that seller, right? So it could be a bad rap if we go behind that agent's back, even though the listing seemed to get canceled a couple days ago. But if we went behind that agent's back and called the seller directly, then the seller says, hey, I spoke with these guys, blah, 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 here are their names, I'm curious what you think of the offer. And then the agent's like, oh, I just talked to these guys last week, they went around me. It'll probably just have a bad taste in his mouth. And then it probably will just kind of kill the relationship and that whole dynamic there, even with the seller too. So in this case, it's probably best for Chris and I to call that agent, see what happened, why it's got pulled off market, and seeing if we can go around the brokerage and pay him a small finder's fee on the back end.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think that was it. I don't know if someone else had their hand up or was about to say something. Was it Darren? Darren, did I see you with your hand up for a second?
Yeah, just one thing quick. How's it going, guys?
Doing good, man.
Sorry, man. I'm still under the weather. Been a whole
dang.
week now.
Dang.
But ever since you guys updated the Google Docs, I'll admit I haven't had a chance to go through what's the update stuff or yet not. Maybe this is already there, but do you guys share the criteria filtering that you guys do for PropStream? Like I know you guys have, the create new ticket, right, with all the leads, but what if I want to utilize PropStream, go DTA, but a different state? Also working with you guys, right?
Yeah.
I got my
yeah.
own filtering, but I just want to know, maybe trying to compare to see if I'm missing something here. But yeah.
We had pulling lists on PropStream right there, Alex. Pulling lists on PropStream for direct to agent low equity.
Yeah,
All right, cool.
It can be updated because honestly, since we did that, Alex and I have changed our filters a bit, and then we also use this other tool that refines that data even more. Yeah, but then Alex and I were also kind of now thinking of doing more, like we're trying to mix it up a bit. Like the last few weeks we've talked about more doing like some cash stuff and pivoting lowball cash offer, and then pivoting to creative.
Right.
Like we're trying to do some more expireds and pre-foreclosures and stuff like that now, which I'm sure we'll be posting and adding more info on in a bit shortly. But yeah, we do have that video though with the basics of having a solid idea of what to pull on PropStream. And I guess we could refine that too, Alex, but I guess not everyone would have access to that tool that we use to skim the data more, but you're still getting the data. It just won't be as refined.
Gotcha. Cool. I thought it'd be there, but like I said, I should have checked. But all right, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. All right. You want to go over that, Alex?
Yeah, so I know on previous Zooms we've used a Google Sheet that helped us calculate and figure out what's a good deal, but unfortunately we can't share that one. So I made this, and to use it, you're first going to want to start with finding rental comps. So you could either find rental comps by going on Zillow, and I could show you after, but let me just find, I need an address to comp.
Just want a random address.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess just pick a random one. You could do Bridgestone. I just saw that pop up.
Okay. All right. So when you're finding if a creative deal is good or not, you're going to want to look at if it cash flows as a long-term rental. And so ideally at this point, you should already know what the monthly payment is, or at least have a general idea of what that number is. And so if we were to comp this property to 3.2 over here, so what I like to do is just see what's available in the market. Probably going to be this seems like it's a little high. This seems a little bit more accurate. And so we've gone over this a couple of times already, but the days listed should be 1-to-1 ratio with the contacts if it's priced right, because this has way more days on market than contacts. Probably means it's a little over market rent. And so to keep it simple, we like to just use this website called Rentcast. And so it gives you a general idea of where you need to be. And so what you do is you just plug in the info. And so this is showing that the estimated monthly rental comp is around 1940. So I guess it's a little hard for me to show you, but let's just say this was breaking even as a long-term rental. Maybe the PITI was 1900, so it was cash flowing $40, but that's not factoring vacancy and management and also other couple things. And so once you have a general idea of where it cash flows or if it breaks even, you're going to want to follow where we need to be for the entry fee. And so if it's breaking even as a long-term rental, it's going to be around 6 to 7% of the purchase price. And this is just a general rule of thumb. It's not 100% of the time going to be accurate, but at least that's where we've moved most of our deals that break even. Right, Jeff?
Yeah, and I was just gonna add, I'm like, shit, I don't want to confuse anyone because like we've always said, it's never black and white. There's always like those exceptions in that gray area, and like that's totally true. Like the break even is an LTR, like we'd probably want to be in closer to 6 to 7. But if that house is a nice new build or just a nice looking home in Vegas, Phoenix, Tampa, one of those major markets, and the interest rate's low, then we could get away with a 10% entry fee. Like this one, where is it? Maricopa, which is right outside of the Phoenix metro area. Like that one, our entry is like, what is it, Alex? Like 8% or something like that. I think it's like 8% entry, and it breaks even as a long-term rental. But just because it has a 3.25% interest rate and is in that general Phoenix metro area, we know we could move it at a 10% entry, including our assignment. So there are exceptions to it, but definitely like this outline here is a good rule of thumb and generalization of what the basics and what it typically will look like. But of course, like I said, there are going to be exceptions to that. Yeah.
Cool. And so I was a little confused when trying to figure out the entry cost when I first started, but just to keep it simple, you add the entry cost plus the existing loan balance to come up with your final purchase price. And so, Jack, it gets a little tricky when using this little entry cost to come up with the purchase price, because realistically, the closing cost,
It does.
but it's still a good idea of what the entry needs to be to justify whether the deal is good or not.
Most people, when they're posting deals, and this is kind of what we do, we don't include closing costs in the purchase price. We'll just say plus CC, which stands for closing costs. So we'll say whatever, 25K entry plus CC. So a lot of people do that. And then also too, for like renovation and holding costs, so repairs and holding costs, that's going to be dependent on the end buyer, right? So that end buyer, they might just say, okay, this could use a little cosmetic work, but screw it, I can just rent it as is, and I already have a tenant lined up, and that tenant will be moving in less than a month. Then there really wouldn't be any additional costs for renovation or holding. So we don't include renovation or holding costs either, because one person's exit strategy could be 10K repairs with 3 months of holding costs, while another person's exit could be just like what I said. So we're typically like, if we're posting a deal to assign, we're basically just stating cash to seller, agent commission, and then plus our assignment fee would be that end buyer's total entry fee. Yeah, just to add that. Right, Alex? I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what we do on every single one.
Yeah.
But, that's just showing you the different ways we can go about it. And if we were taking down the property ourselves, we would definitely be a lot more precise about it and say, hey, this is our exit. If we're wrapping it, we might be holding it for 3 months. So let's factor this in. Or if we want to do this, we'll have to do this repairs. Yeah.
Cool. And then someone shared this address. I just want to see if we could find a rental comp for them as well. Do you ever use a rent estimate,
It's
Josh?
actually not bad. If you go to like Zillow, if you just go on Google and search Zillow rent calculator, it's actually fairly decent, the setup for the Zillow rent calculator. Like it's free, you just type in the address and then it shows you a little map and it shows the prices. It's similar to Rentcast.
Cool. Yeah, I just want to see if it comes up with a similar number. Not far off.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's it for now. I just kind of was touching it up this morning, so I'm gonna probably need to make some small tweaks here and there, but this will be useful for everyone to have a better idea and also just get practice at doing underwriting yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing that helps with that a lot too is, and of course there's like a learning curve to it. The more you look at the stuff, the more you do, the more you're going to understand what's a deal and what isn't a deal. And I think having this tool will help a lot in terms of, hey, should I submit this or not? And maybe, Alex, with that, we add like, just because everyone will be seeing that and using it to underwrite, maybe we add like some verbiage kind of somewhere else too about like, maybe we add like a cash one below that too or something too, don't you think? Just so, because we've had people submit like leads that aren't even leads, where it's just like this person said, oh yeah, I'll take a cash offer. But that's just like me going on the MLS and just randomly picking houses for sale. And like, of course, I'll take a cash offer. So I think if we put that in there as well too, that would help in terms of getting like a cash calculator. I think I have one too that I could probably just add to that. I don't know if you can just copy and paste. Can you copy and paste it or no? Like when it auto formulates, or do you have to like not program it? I'm so bad, dude, with this stuff. I don't know. Script it a certain way.
As long as these numbers are in the
Okay.
Yeah, no, it should be good. If not, I could.
Okay, cool.
And then Let me run this property. I'll do one more and then we're going to go over handling objections. So this one's already available for rent. 15 days, 2 applications. That's pretty good. Applications are like the final step. So usually you contact the person before you apply, but it seems like this one has
Could be,
some decent interest.
yeah, could be bugged too, man. Because I've seen some of those where they're like listed for rent for like 60 days with 0 and 0. Like, I don't know how accurate the Zillow info is personally.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Dude, it's so weird, man. Those houses with like metal tin roofs. Like one of those in that Lubbock portfolio we're working on is like a $300,000 house, except it has like that metal tin barn roof. I don't get that.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was random. So you're gonna go over one more and then I'm gonna go over the objections. Dude, I gotta get sleep, man. I gotta get sleep.
Yeah, this one's kind of hard to find and justify what it's being listed at, just because there really isn't too much in the nearby area. This one's probably bugged as well. Yeah, they just never took it off Zillow. Because with 55 contacts, there's got to be at least one person that was interested
Yeah.
in getting in there. This one, wow, this is insane.
Damn. Yeah. And yeah, Austin, I just saw your comment there. We definitely want to do that. And if you watch the new videos that we recorded, like that's part of the sales process of basically disqualifying the cash offer. And it's going to vary like what sort of lead you're speaking with. Like if it's a DTA, like a direct to agent, low equity list that we gave you, likely that cash offer 100% will never work, because if it's a low equity listing, that means their mortgage is close to what the house is worth. So if we give them a lowball cash offer, they're going to be writing a super fat check at closing. But any other scenario where it's not like a low equity listing, you definitely want to be anchoring hard with cash and then seeing if they take it. If not, then pivoting to creative. But I mean, even with the DTA low equity, you're still kind of disqualifying cash, but just not as heavy.
Yeah, with DTA low equity, there really isn't a reason in saying a number, because the agent should have a general idea of what the existing loan balance is, and if it's maybe 10% under what the asking price is, there's no way they're going to be able to take 60% of ARV, because that would mean they're going to be taking a 20 to 30% loss on their home, which depending on the price of the home, it could be a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. The cash ones are more of like whatever the one you were just showing that someone commented and it looked like a major fixer in Florida and they had it listed for like 45K or something like that. Like that's like, okay, maybe you could get that for 20 and then who knows? We'd have to really look at that. That one looked like a mess though, in terms of all the repairs that needed to be done to it.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay, dude, you're screen sharing this. Okay, cool. So I guess before we go through these, because like I said, we've said this a lot in our last meeting, like it's very rare for something to stump me or Alex now. Don't get me wrong, it still can happen. And one of them happened to me the other day where I was like, you know what? That's a good question. Let me check on that. So I'm curious, before I share that recent one, if anyone has had any questions or objections from agents where you're like, oh crap, I have no clue how to answer that, in terms of whether it was something to do with sub two, anything really, just an objection an agent had. So that was a good one that someone mentioned earlier about the assignments, like wholesaling, but curious if anyone else has had any other things other than kind of the basics that have been on this sheet here that's shared with everyone.
Hi, Jack. This is Vyra.
Hey, Vyra, how are you doing?
Hi, great. So I have a question. I'm not sure if this is an objection, but I come across like 2 agents that asked if, you know, they could represent us or me on the deal, like write the offer for them to have like a bigger commission. How do you answer that?
Yeah, so if it's a deal that makes me want to go throw a party and jump up and down over, then sure. but most of the time that's not the case. So usually it's like we've had agents represent us like Tammy, Alex. Well, they'll do it for no additional fee just to get their house moved, just to get the property moved and make their normal commission. If we're asking an agent to represent us, I guess you could maybe say like a flat fee, but ideally we're just trying to represent ourselves, quote unquote, and not have another agent involved, because then now we're paying a buyer agent commission, which the spreads are usually pretty limited on these sub two creative direct to agent deals. Like it's not like it's 100K assignment fee spread and it's like, okay, we can give 5K away to the agent. Typically, like we just showed on these sub two deals, we need to be around usually less than a 10% entry fee. So if we're already giving 2.5 to 3% to the listing agent, and then if we want to give up another 2.5 or 3.5, now let's say we're at 6%, and then the seller wanted a little bit of cash and there's closing costs, there's almost nowhere for us to make an assignment fee. So it really just depends on the deal and how big the spread looks. Like if an agent says, hey, they're willing to accept this super low cash offer range that you're talking about, and it looks like a huge spread, then sure, to get it moved, we could do that. But of course, that's one of those gray area things where it's never black and white. So I would typically just push for the, hey, like, you know, we would represent ourselves, where we would, you know, submit our own offer. If you'd be willing to write it up for us, though, you know, that would be great. And then if there's, I mean, what do you think, Alex? I definitely don't think we want buyer's agents being involved, or technically it's a listing agent, but not representing us as well as a buyer's agent.
So it gets a little tricky because for the DTA low equity deals, like Jack said, there just won't be enough meat on the bone for us to make a spread unless we're going to close on it ourselves. But for us to give an agent 6% commission or 5%, whatever, it's going to have to be a really good deal. But the way I like to see it is on that specific deal, if it's DTA low equity, you probably can't. But that doesn't mean if they were to bring you an off-market deal, we couldn't give them the 6%. It just has to be justified by how good the deal is when we're having them represent both ways. And also, I just don't like the idea of agents wanting to do that, just because to me it's pretty unethical. How can you represent both sides when you're supposed to have loyalty to one? So it can work. It just, if they're bringing it to you, it has to be like a smoking hot deal. It can't be just, this one looks okay. It has to be justified based on how much we're cash flowing or where the location is, or just there has to be pretty good reason to justify a 6% commission.
Yeah.
To add to that,
and also they're asking if I could sign a buyer broker agreement to represent them. I mean, to represent me on the deal.
It depends, right? Like if you would have to sign a buyer broker agreement anyway if that agent was willing to represent you for no commission. Like we had one, unfortunately we had to cancel on it just yesterday, but we had one under contract with this agent that did the same thing previously just to get her deal moved. She was willing to represent us and write the offer. And we signed a buyer broker agreement, and it just stated her listing agent commission, and we weren't paying her any buyer agent commission. So you could still theoretically sign a buyer. You'd have to sign a buyer broker agreement, even if that agent's representing you for nothing on your end, just the listing agent commission portion.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then Darren, sorry, were you about to say something, or I heard someone about to?
yeah. I spoke with a bunch of realtor earlier this week.
Nice.
No luck, but they were telling me the whole, representing double agent. I think possibly next year, Big Brother's gonna put a stop to that, just because of Alex just mentioned. What justification?
Yeah.
They don't see why one would get 6%, because that shit is a lot, right? So
Yeah.
maybe they'll change soon throughout the whole state, but I know some states it's already converting over, so eventually we won't have to worry about that too much. But just thought FYI.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping so. Don't get me wrong. Some agents are great, and then some are like the laziest people in the world, and it's crazy. Like there's one we're dealing with right now where this house will not sell traditionally at all. And this agent is just like, there's title issues and she's not wanting to try to solve the title issues with her client. It's just a mess. And I'm like, and her listing, it's like she literally went and just went boom, 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 and snapped like 5 pictures in 30 seconds with her cell phone and then left. And then her client's like, no wonder why my house hasn't sold in like 4 months, you know?
Which
And
is
then
good
it's
for us.
crazy.
It's really
That's
good for us in the
true.
sense that more people are starting to realize that real estate agents maybe aren't the best way to sell your property. And so if you're able to establish credibility and seem like you know what you're doing when speaking directly to sellers, it's going to lead to more deal flow, I think, within this next year, because
100%.
there was
So this is off. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good.
I was gonna say this is a little bit off topic, but I got a lead here today. Facebook Market. She posted on what is it? Facebook. Blah blah blah. They're working on a realtor. He hasn't got back to me yet, but what is the process of owner not wanting to work with a realtor no more? Not that I'm gonna be like, hey, cut them off, but something like that. Do they need to both sign some sort of release agreement, or do you guys know?
They would have to terminate the original agreement. Yeah, and it depends on what that initial contract is they have with that agent in the brokerage. I know some of them it's easy as just a one-party termination of, hey, I don't want to sell my house anymore, whatever. And then I know there's some where you're locked in for like 3-6 months or however long you agree upon in the contract. So it's gonna vary. Yeah.
Got it.
One thing to mention too, on top of that, yeah, like a lot of real estate agents, for example, like the one I was just talking about, tons like that. They don't want to answer their phones. They don't want to try to sell properties. Why the F are they getting paid $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 on a commission where they're literally taking frickin' iPhone pictures and just answer a call on the weekend? Don't get me wrong. Some agents are great and work their asses off. And we work with some like that and nothing but respect to them. And people like that, great. And I love doing business with, just like Chris, Alex, like Chris, he was an agent. He's like a top agent in Arizona. He was on one of our Zooms, I think last Saturday. He works his ass off, and someone like him, I'd love to pay his commission all day long. But then there's other agents where it's like, okay, tons of them, right? Who are just like not really answering their phones, iPhone pictures. It doesn't look professional at all. And then they want $5,000-$10,000, whatever it is, commission for doing nothing. That like pisses me off. Yeah. What's up, John?
Yeah, so with that, just to continue that topic, in order to avoid that 6%, do you guys write up your own offer, or you have like your own sort of buyer's agent, or how do you guys go about doing that on your end to avoid that 6% of paying at least 3% to each agent? What do you guys usually do? What's your process?
So 90% of the time we're just writing up our own offer. Sometimes a brokerage will accept our typical like subject to contract that we use, and we'll just write up our own offer. Occasionally, some brokerages will say we need to have our state specific form. And then I've heard mixed feedback on this, honestly. I've heard if you're not a licensed agent, you can't write certain state specific contracts. You can't fill them out yourself. I think that's BS though. But I had a TC tell me that. But we haven't never had to deal with it where it's like, oh shoot, we need a buyer's agent to write our offer, and we've had to go out to reach out to one. I've had buyer's agents bring me deals and say, hey Jack, can you pay me a little finder's fee on this? I'll write the offer for you. Sure. But we've never been like, oh shoot, we need a buyer's agent to write this offer for us. We need to pay them 3%. Like usually we can just write up our own offers, or we've had agents to do dual agency for no commission for writing our offer.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
And
'cause
that,
I've heard some of that as well of like, oh, some people say, oh, you need a state specific,
yeah,
offer and all this stuff. And so I guess it all just kind of depends. But
there's so much mixed info out there. And don't get me wrong, like we're in the sub 2 mentorship, and like I'll see, like if you ask a question, you look at the comment section, and so many like people that are licensed agents, brokers, whatever, they'll all have different opinions on a certain topic. And don't get me wrong, like some stuff is actual like contract legal law, like state law. So I'm sure you could look it up and find it. But like when we're doing deals nationwide, like someone told me a couple days ago, or I think it was a live stream I was watching with Jameel and Pace, and they were saying something about you can't wholesale in Oklahoma. You need to be licensed. And I'm like, Alex, we just did like, well, I know we had, I think one canceled, but we had one assignment like a month ago in Oklahoma where we got an assignment fee, and I'm like, and then we wrote that up ourselves on the state contract. And then like one of my TCs we used to work with says you could totally do that. That's fine. And then another person's like, yeah, you need to have a licensed agent to write up a state contract for you, or you could get, a small fine. And there's just, that's probably some Sean St. Clair question we ask on Monday, Alex. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. And then also, with the whole state contracts, that's more so when you're working with agents. If you're working direct to seller,
Yeah, exactly.
they're probably not going to care.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's the
Yeah, I was-
brokerage that cares.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured. I was like, if I'm calling agents and then, they're gonna ask, I've had a couple ask me, do you have a buyer's agent? Are they willing to double dip? Stuff like that, or I'm just talking with them. And so that's what I was kind of wondering is like if we're trying to avoid that 6%, right? Because you're paying them a big chunk of what you're trying to make. It's like, well, do we need that absolute like state certified contract or whatever, so yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think so. The thing is, when you're doing direct to seller, a lot of these sellers, they're going to have a little bit more of a shield at first when you're going direct to them and telling them, hey, I'll take over your mortgage. Versus if you're going direct to agent, that agent, they're kind of the intermediary there. They know about it most of the time, and they're directing their client. So the client kind of feels more understanding, and they don't have a huge shield up front. But I've noticed like one of these leads I was working on, it's a direct to seller expired listing. The first 3 calls, the seller like had a massive shield put up, and then all of a sudden on like the 4th call, snap of a finger, now the seller's like, thank you so much, like this is really going to help if we can get this done. Here's the information to reach out to my lender and the new builder. Let's see if we can get them get the loan wiped off my debt to income ratio. Like, thank you so much. Where previous I was like, damn, this guy was like an a-hole and was super rude on the phone, and all of a sudden it was a snap like that. And if we can create rapport and build relationships and make people trust us direct to seller, I would much rather do that than have agents involved getting, a decent piece of the pie for doing nothing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Awesome. Yeah, appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, yes, sir. Any other questions or objections? Then we can go over these briefly really quick, but I wanted to kind of touch on the one that stumped me the other day.
Jack and Alex, just a quick one.
Yeah.
How would you I know I've mentioned this probably to Alex before. I really get stumped when it comes to divorce sellers. I really struggle with that because I guess I'm coming from the perspective of, just imagining that between the two of them, they probably don't want anything to do with each other, and like sub two may force them into a situation where they've still got that one last link, with each other. So I just wondered, like, how would you respond to that? Because as soon as the agent says it to me, I'm like, like we're both like, oh yeah, okay, and I don't feel like I've got any fight in the game. So how should I structure that conversation in a way that pulls them towards seeing sub 2 as a potential solution?
So it really just depends, of course, on their motivation. Because the way I see it, it's more of just like a mental roadblock barrier, right? It's a mental barrier and like emotional barrier of, I want to be completely done with this person. And in the back of my mind, we still have our name together on the debt associated with this mortgage that's tied to this property. Even though they won't have to talk or do anything or, be in contact with each other, I feel like it's just a mental roadblock or barrier knowing that, hey, this divorced couple is still connected in a way through this loan. So it's more of a mental roadblock than anything, but at the same time, motivation can totally wipe that away. Because if that person's losing money monthly, paying 2 mortgages, they bought a new house, or each one bought a new house, they're paying multiple mortgages, and it's not selling traditionally, and they're in a really bad financial spot. I shouldn't say they won't care, but they'll do what they need to do to get that house sold and carry on with their lives without getting in a major financial hardship. But there's no real way to kind of overcome that other than just like, hey, your clients aren't talking, they don't have to be hey, is this mortgage getting paid? Like, we have a servicing company, they'll be making those payments every single month. The ex-husband and ex-wife, they won't be talking. They don't have to, it's just the debt, the original loan is going to be in place that was under their names, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, what would you say, Alex, that there's not really a way to go around it other than, like I said, it's more of like an emotional, mental barrier. And if the motivation's high enough, it'll wipe it out and it'll be a deal.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is correct. One thing I would want to add is whether it's the agent or the seller, letting them know that this isn't the first time you worked on a deal like that.
Yeah.
Just kind of building credibility like that. Like if I heard an agent come back with, "Oh yeah, that won't work. This is a divorce situation," my response instantly would just be, "Oh, really? I just worked on a divorce situation 2 weeks ago."
Yeah.
And then going into kind of what you said, but
Yeah.
just letting them know it's possible, because like you said, it really just depends on how motivated they are. If they could get that cash offer traditionally, sure, great. But what if in 3 months the house is still on the market? They really have no other choice. So that's more of like a follow-up game
Yeah.
scenario.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, because I think one of the issues was about, like if there is equity, then they want to split the equity and stuff like that. So, they kind of just want to.
Yeah, then
be
it's
done
done
with
with
it
the
from
down
that.
payment, right? So like the cash to seller at closing, like Dakota Valley, Alex, that one in San Antonio, like that was one where it was a divorce scenario. They were like, I want this, I want that. Okay, this person gets 9,000, this person gets 13. There was one I did like 5 or 6 months ago, a while ago, in Colorado, where it was a divorce scenario where that's what we did. We split it up. And it was a direct to seller lead with no agent involved, actually.
Okay.
And it was like 4K to one person, 4K to the other person, and then we just took over the payments, and they were fine with that because it was an expired listing. They had it on market, and it was priced way above what they'd be able to sell it at without writing like a $40,000 check. So they
Okay.
decided that's a much better option. Who cares if their name is still on the debt together? It made more sense for them to do that than write a $40,000 check.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks.
And then just to touch on, I guess, the objection that kind of stumped me the other day, and it shouldn't have really stumped me. It was just more so of the way it was worded, and out of nowhere, I was like, oh shit, that's a good question. But then I figured it out after I asked someone. I'm like, how did I not think of that? That makes so much sense. But this seller told the agent, and then the agent asked me, she's like, my seller's a bit worried. What if you take over the payments and the house catches on fire and burns down, and then you take the full insurance claim, which was all the money on the house, and then you run, and then I'm just stuck with the debt on the mortgage. And like, I've heard the whole story before, like, okay, what if the house burns down? Of course it's covered by the insurance, blah, blah, blah. But then her saying, what if you almost try to commit fraud and run with the insurance payoff? How am I protected from that? And that just kind of stumped me for a second. And it kind of an easy one the more I thought about it and asked someone else. But essentially, like, well, I'm curious, does anyone have a guess on that as to how they're protected?
Whoever's name on the insurance will take the money.
Well, yeah, so technically on that, sorry, I should have mentioned this too. On the new policy you create, like, there's multiple ways you can go about it, but the way we typically do these and how most people do them is you create a new insurance policy as the new owner who has the deed. It's their policy, and then they'll add the seller as additionally insured. And then also too, and this kind of answers it here, but the lost payee is the original note holder or the original lender. So lost payee, that basically just says it in itself, is if something happens to the property and it's lost, meaning it's burnt down or something major happens, that original lender, of course, they're in first lien position because they have a mortgage on the house. They're going to be the ones that are paid off first before the person who has that policy or the additionally insured. So it would be impossible if that house burned down for me to try to commit some sort of fraud and take that $200,000 payoff and run. That wouldn't even happen, which makes so much sense. And I should know that, but just the way it was worded at that time, I was like, crap, that kind of like stumped me. So there's a bunch of different random objections that come up, but that was kind of interesting because it was a super specific one the other day. And then these are more like basic, more common ones. I know we've already gone through these a little bit. How will I know the mortgage will get paid on time? Third-party servicing company, pretty much connecting my bank account to the third-party servicer, which is then connected to the online portal of the mortgage, pulling money from my account each month, automatically making the payments. So it's not like something I have to remember every single day, the end of the month, to go make that payment. And then also too, what happens if you miss a payment? This one kind of has a little bit of gray area around it lately, because Pace originally taught deed in lieu of foreclosure, always mentioned performance deed or deed in lieu of foreclosure. And then like a month ago, he's not teaching it anymore because there is some gray area with it, because not every title company, servicing company, or attorney will say it holds up in a specific state. And like we had a deal in Arizona that we closed a couple weeks ago where the seller wanted a deed in lieu of foreclosure, a pre-signed deed in lieu of foreclosure. And that title company and servicer said, we can't do that in Arizona law. They won't allow that. So instead, we had verbiage stating buyer will sign a deed in lieu of foreclosure if he misses 30 days of payments, where it should be there's a pre-signed deed in lieu of foreclosure held at the servicing company. And then if a payment's missed for 30 days, the property automatically gets deeded back to the seller. Because this was fine enough for the seller, but say if I was a buyer in a property and I was late on payments, I just wouldn't sign the freaking paper in 30 days, and they'd have to foreclose on me and go through the foreclosure process. So doesn't really protect them there, but in other states and other title companies, other attorneys, it's just really opinionative. They're fine with it. So that's kind of a gray area. Another thing too is literally just telling people what happens if I miss a payment. Well, if I miss a payment and I'm not making payments and it's hurting your credit, you would have to go through the foreclosure process on me and take back over the house and deal with those fees. But then you justify how that will never happen. Like, hey, this is our business. This is what we do. I have skin in the game, meaning my down payment, closing costs, cash to seller, all that stuff. And then this is a business. I have a 3% interest rate loan. I would never stop making payments on this because then I wouldn't have a business. And then I basically just gave you a free 20 or 30 grand and you got your house back. So usually that enough in it alone is enough to make that person feel comfortable and understand that you're going to be consistent on payments and won't have to get foreclosed on. And then who is responsible for repairs, blah, blah, blah. That's a super basic one. That one doesn't get asked too much because it's like, hey, I'm buying the house from the person. The debt's in their name, but the deed transfers to me. So the property is mine. It's just I'm making payments on the debt that was originally associated with that original seller. How are utilities insurance handled? Just like I kind of touched on already, we usually create a new policy where the seller is added as additional insured. And then, of course, just swapping the utilities. One thing too that I want to mention, there's a lot of ways, well, not a lot of ways, but there's a handful of ways that people do this. So that's the most common one, where you create a new landlord policy, add the seller as additionally insured. But some people too, they'll keep the existing policy in place, and then they will get a new policy as well. Just because they're concerned if they cancel the original policy and replace it with their own, that it might flag the bank or the lender and get them to call due on sale. But that never happens. Pace does it that way. He creates a new policy and adds the seller is additionally insured. Won't this affect my debt to income to buy another house? So that's somewhat pretty. Actually, that's a really common question that we deal with. And it will, but we can overcome that. And if it's in the short term, we have a lender that we work with that specializes in doing these creative finance transactions where he can wipe that original loan off a seller's debt to income ratio pretty much instantly before closing. So they could go buy a new house. And he does that through like a lease agreement, a lease option agreement. And then another thing too, If it's more of like a longer time frame, if the person doesn't need it instantly, just having proof with the third party servicer or receipt of payments that someone else is making those monthly payments on the mortgage within a year of proof of receipt, get 100% of that debt wiped off your DTI ratio. And then usually within 6 months, 3 to 6 months, you can get 75% of that debt wiped off your DTI. How does sub 2 affect my credit? So the loan is left in the seller's name. So as a buyer making on-time payments, that's going to boost the person's credit, right? And of course, that buyer ideally and 99.9% of the time is going to make all those payments on time, and it will actually boost the seller's credit. Then number 7, what happens if there's due on sale? So due on sale clause, pretty much all mortgages have this, basically just stating if the deed is transferred, title transfers, then that original lien holder or bank or lender, whatever you want to call them, they have the right to call that remaining balance due in full because they qualified that original seller for that loan, not somebody else. So theoretically, if title transfers, they have the right to call that note due in full. They almost never do it. I'd say less than like 0.5% of the time. And if they were to call it due, typically the whole foreclosure process would have to happen. You usually have at least 90 days to try to resolve it. Sometimes it's as simple as calling the bank and telling them what's going on, proving that you're a credible person who can make those payments financially, also deeding it back to the seller, having them do a contract for deed, land contract, agreement for sale. Those are just different names for those executory contracts. And basically what that does is then that basically the deed's back in the seller's name. The seller can then show the lender that, hey, the property is still in my name. I have the deed. Okay. Then they stop the acceleration of the note. That's one of the ways. Another way is putting it in a land trust. The trust is confidential with who the beneficiaries are, unless you're in Arizona and one other state, which I believe it's Florida. There's a lot of ways to go around it. And then worst case scenario, paying it off in cash or getting a new loan and refining out of it at a slightly higher interest rate.
Cool, man. I think that's all the general objections. And I just want to emphasize that if you're able to have all these answers in the back of your pocket when making these calls, you'll separate yourself from a lot of people calling. There's a lot of agents that Jack and I speak to that once we even handle one of these objections are like, wow, I haven't spoke to someone that was able to answer that. And hearing that is like, okay, well, now they know I'm the expert in the room. And if they ever come across anything, as long as you're doing your follow-ups, they're going to come back with something for me. And so just trying to look at this maybe right before you start making calls could help, because it's important that every call you're making is with the intention that you're going to have them be open to it. And so if you know what you're talking about, it's just going to make it easier of a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. And no, it's actually crazy though. I mean, the amount of people, like you said, Alex, that agents we talk to say this person couldn't answer this question. Because basically, it's not like we're trying to buy candy at a candy store, right? You're trying to buy someone's house. And that's something you should really know what you're talking about and feel confident and comfortable with talking about. So that makes it so much easier for Alex and I, and of course, like other people who are investors and do a lot of these. Because this is a low barrier to entry, like, just reaching out to homeowners and agents. If you know your stuff, which is literally like the main stuff to know is going to be what we just covered here, these 7 points. If you can handle those objections and be confident in the way you answer them, an agent's going to think you're super serious and you're going to stand out from like 90% of the people they speak with, because 90% of the people they speak with, they'll watch like a YouTube video and just start calling and they don't know how to answer any of that stuff. So it's huge really to really nail these down and know how to deal with those objections. And then, yeah, Christian, I see you got a question.
Hey Jack, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. So I just got a quick question. being a newbie in this space, um, do you have a recommendation where to go to learn more about the terminology? Because like land land contract, deed of sale, like all of those real estate terminology. Do you have like a
Yeah.
video you recommend me watch?
So in Discord, in the helpful documents, we do have a terms and definitions document, and that'll have all that stuff there. I don't know if it has land contract. Does it, Alex? It might just say executory contracts, and that falls in place. Lease option. We may need to add that. Yeah, we can add those kind of contracts, but those would fall under place into executory contracts. But we can add that in there. Yeah, in terms of just basic
Okay.
definitions. But we have that document there, terms and definitions, with just very basic stuff and then a little more advanced stuff like lease options, wraparound, and then we'll talk about those executory contracts too with what you were just talking about, like the land contract, contract for deed.
Okay. And just go to Discord and on the page.
Discord and helpful documents. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. That's dedication, man. All right. I wanted to say when you were talking, Christian, are you in, that looks like Sprouts. I don't know why. I don't know where you're from.
I'm actually I'm at Costco.
Oh, okay. Nice. Cool.
I don't know
cool.
if you remember, we had a chat like a couple weeks ago. I don't know, it's like 2-3 weeks ago. That
Yeah.
I was actually working in accounting, and I wanted to commit myself to this. So I from working in the office, I'm doing like Instacart. So I'm at Costco.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I remember.
I didn't order.
Cool.
But yeah.
Awesome, man.
Awesome, man. Stay consistent.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
And John, I see you got your hand up.
Sorry, I clicked out of the screen like
No
at the
worries.
last second.
No worries.
Yeah, with wraps, I was learning a little more about that, watching some of your guys' videos on that. And you mentioned that you obtain a house, say like sub 2 or something, and then you wrap it with like your own sort of finance and heightened interest rate that you wrap and give to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
In the video that I watched where you were kind of explaining that, you mentioned almost heightening the interest rate to like a 9% or something like that, right? That just seemed like really high to me. So I was wondering, like, is that a very specific person or investor that wrap that to? Because that just seemed like such a high interest rate. I was like, why would somebody take a 9% interest rate
Can
on
you
a
give
wrap?
me a screen share, please, Alex? Or I mean, host, so I can screen share super quick.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point, and it's going to vary drastically depending on the purchase price of the house, location, and what kind of the rent rate is. So you can imagine, like on a $500,000 house, we're not going to get away with like a 9, 10, 11, 12% interest rate. But on, let me see here. Damn,
And while you're pulling that up, John, it's crucial that you're staying less than $500 above what the rental comps are telling you. So if a 9% is under that 500, then it's justified. But
yeah,
that 9% won't really apply to all properties. There's sometimes whatever the rental comps are, you can only maybe bump up the interest rate 2%.
Okay,
yeah,
so it really varies depending on the property. Like,
yeah.
I
It
mean,
does.
obviously it varies on the property, but like, like 9% was just an example, really depending on the purchase price and the sort of gap that you get based off the rent,
Yeah,
and what
yeah.
your payments are.
And that's a general, that's another gray area thing. Like some people will say, a lot of people say, live or die on the, hey, you got to keep it within a $500 spread of what the rent rate is on that property. But then at the same time, like there's another guy that's like the biggest person for marketing wraps to end buyers, Tanner Osborne, Alex. He's told me like it's like a 50-50 chance of like, okay, the rent rate's fine, but then there's the exception. Like say if it's a $600,000 house and you're selling it on a 5.5% interest rate, which is 2.5% lower than what current rates are, say with a low down payment, they don't have to qualify with their own credit, but it's $800, $1,000 higher than what the rent rate is, then that's still an exception there and it'll probably work. This is actually and it's seasonality and us not working with the right people and just figuring it out. But this is one that I own, and we've been price dropping the hell out of it because we just want it off our balance sheet and to be done with. But this is one I have in Oklahoma right now that we're marketing on a wrap. And theoretically, like the as is value of this house is like 155K, 150K, or at least that's what comps were telling us like 2 months ago. But of course, interest rates kind of rose. They're coming down a little bit now, though. And then also seasonality. Things always slow down drastically from like just before Thanksgiving until early next year, or I should say early into January. And this one, I took over like a 2 point something percent loan, sub 2, and we're asking for a $1,750 a month payment. And this can rent for about, so we're slightly higher. We might need to come down slightly on the payment, but you know, we are negotiable with all these terms. So basically my monthly payment, when you're doing a wrap, you're just looking at principal and interest because that end buyer who you sell it to on a wrap, they're paying for the taxes and insurance. So you're just looking at the spread between the principal and interest on on the mortgage I'm paying and then the note I'm basically wrapping it at and creating to sell to the end buyer. So the P&I on this is like $400, the principal and interest, because it's about it's just under $100,000 note. It's like 94K at 2 point something percent interest. So that right there is like a $400 a month payment. And then I'm wrapping it to an end buyer. This includes taxes and insurance, so I'm trying to remember, but it's about a $1,700 a month payment. So that equates to like 11-12% interest rate in terms of what that monthly payment is. But at the same time, that's only about $500 higher than current market rent. And it's still super cheap just because this house is super cheap, $150,000 house. Like there's exceptions with it where same with Texas, like in some other smaller markets where the median home price is like less than 200K. You can wrap these houses like, 10% plus interest, no problem. But the higher the home price goes, the harder it is going to be to find that wrap buyer for that house who can afford those payments. But the ideal wrap buyer is that person who can't qualify for traditional financing through a bank, whether they have bad credit, whatever it is, which is almost like 20% of people actually. I forgot the exact number Pace gave, but it was something pretty high. I think it was like 20-30% of people who try to qualify for a house traditionally don't qualify. And so this is listed on market, and then I also have like Craigslist posts going for it too. And like it's probably gonna be blurry. Yeah, it's blurry, whatever. But someone messaged me off Craigslist literally yesterday, and they're like, I really like this house. The down payment I can afford is only $5,000. My monthly payments could probably be around $1,600. Let me talk with my boyfriend tomorrow though, because he makes more money than I do. So that person probably can't qualify traditionally. They're trying to get a house. A wrap is very similar to like a rent to own option where basically, they're coming in with a small down payment, making payments. People, when they say rent to own, it's more of like a lease option though. But basically, like that's kind of an example of just people who can't qualify traditionally. They might not have good credit, but they can afford the monthly payments. And if they have a significant enough down payment that works for us, and they're fine with the monthly payment that we're charging them, then we can basically become a note holder and just create a spread there and make money like a bank would and not have to worry about tenants, maintenance, and all that crap that comes with having rentals.
Yeah. Okay. No, yeah, that sounds good. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
That's some good feedback on the saves, Jack.
Yeah, no, it is. And that's why we price dropped at 10K. And I was like, dude, if we drop it anymore, we're just going to keep this as a rental because we'll move it. We'll move it at this. I know for sure though, because we just want to move it quick. Because I was like, dude, Christmas is coming. I know we'll be holding this for another 2 months unless we really significantly price drop it. So you're getting basically like a house right at market value on owner finance with less than 20% down, which is good. So yeah.
Can I ask a question very quick?
Yeah.
Hi,
So,
Nancy.
hi, how are you?
Good.
So if you charge the monthly like on the web is much more higher than what they would get by renting on the market, they still want to do deal with you. Because I would say, okay, if I rent, I pay $1,000 less or $500 less. Maybe I still want to rent instead of paying so much higher.
But they don't get home ownership with renting though. That's the thing. Like with this, they own the home. They're making payments just like the bank to own the home. They get the asset, whereas they were just renting it. Like for them, it could be worth the trade-off, right? Like for that house I was just showing, they could be paying me $1,100 or $1,200 in rent a month for it, or they could pay me $400 or $500, $600 more a month, and they actually get to own the property. And for some people, that's worth it. Like, you know, the American dream of owning, I guess, your own home. Yeah, because if you're just renting, then you know you're not actually getting to keep the asset. Whereas with this, it's like, wow, I may have bad credit. I can't qualify through a bank to get this asset, but I only need 15K down and then pay slightly above what I'd be paying for rent, and I can keep this house.
Must be a tip point, okay, that's way high. So
yeah.
So what do you say? It's like 20% higher than the rent? It's okay, or do you have like a percentage? Or
so
no?
Usually, like general rule of thumb is about $500, $500 more. But like I said, there's always going to be exceptions, right? Like if I saw or I guess I can screen share again. Let me see here. So for example, like, let's see here, price, we'll just do something kind of absurd. Let's go here. Okay. This might be too crazy of an example, but say for example, on this one, like this house probably rents for, I don't want to pull it up because it doesn't really matter, but let's say this house rents for $4,000. Let's say this house rents for $4,000. It's a $1.2 million home in Oklahoma. I guarantee you that, let's say if this had a 4 or 5% interest rate, that monthly payment would be way higher than $4,000. That monthly payment would be closer to probably $7,000 or $8,000 at like a 4% interest rate. Let's say I took that house over sub 2. This would be perfect for a whiteboard example, by the way, too, Alex, but just for next time. Say if I took this house over sub 2 at a 3% interest rate, and then I wrapped it to an end buyer at a 4% interest rate. That end buyer, they might really want this house. They have money, they can afford the monthly payment. It might be appealing to them because if they wanted that house traditionally, they'd be at a 7% interest rate right now, and that monthly payment would be like 12 grand, or maybe slightly higher. I'm not 100% sure. That's my guess, somewhere around 12 grand. Whereas if they went through us and they got it at 4%, okay, they might be paying more than $2,000 a month over what it would rent for. But if they wanted home ownership on that traditionally right now, they would be paying, you know, a premium of like $5,000-$6,000 a month over what I'm offering it to them. So it's gonna vary drastically, you know, sort of like what that guy told me. Typically the general rule of thumb though, on like the more median priced homes, like less than 400K, you're usually going to want to be within like 500 of that rent rate. But of course, if there's $1 million home and I'm offering it to finance it to someone with a low down payment at 3% interest, 4% interest, then those kind of rules get thrown out the window because I'm sure there'd be a buyer for that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Let me see here. Yeah, very good point. Very good point, Austin. That's exactly too like, because people, when you think, oh, they can't qualify traditionally, like a lot of these people who can't qualify traditionally still have money. Like they're sales guys, 1099, and they can show, hey, I can easily afford these monthly payments, but you know, they just can't qualify traditionally because it's not W-2'd income. And then did Alex answer this? Seller finance only works when the property is paid off full. Yep. So technically, yeah. So we're not selling this house basically on a wraparound. We're wrapping existing terms. So technically it's like an owner finance, like we're seller financing the house to them, but there's still the additional remaining mortgage note that we're creating in place that's beneath it. So this, like the house that I was showing, I don't own that free and clear. I took it over sub 2 and I'm just doing a wrap and selling it on a contract for deed at a higher interest rate and higher purchase price.
I got a question, guys.
Yeah, what's up, Ruben?
So in the instance, right outside of the list that you guys send us, say I have a chance to lock somebody up, right? Because I do understand how to underwrite and the basics or whatnot. And say I'm talking to a seller and the agent, and they agree to the LOI that I sent them.
Yeah.
At that point, because I would want to get a TC involved to facilitate everything, so I don't have to do that. But before doing that, do I actually send them like a basic like purchase and sale agreement for them to sign and then transfer that over to the TC to like basically explain have them sign the addendums and have them explain everything? Or right off the rip, do I get the TC involved and then have them basically facilitate everything from the jump?
Depends on what you're wanting to do and your TC and how they're structured. Some TCs will charge a 50% upfront fee. So sometimes TCs will charge like $1,200 total and they'll ask for a $600 upfront fee. So you may have something that's not even really a deal. And then you're telling the TC to write paperwork on it. And then the TC starts paperwork and then she charges you or he charges you an upfront fee and then the seller doesn't sign. So that could be one issue. And that's based on your risk tolerance. And then another thing too, hey, is this TC in-house or do they have a bunch of clients? How long is it going to take for that TC to get a written contract over to that seller and to set up an appointment to explain everything? Because I've had deals snake for me before just because my old TC lagged like almost 2 days on getting a contract over.
Right.
So that's just things to consider. Typically with us, Alex and I, we send over all the contracts ourselves and basically TC our own stuff. And then when we assign something, we let that end buyer bring their own TC in place. But now we might start, I think we're going to start working with the TC again because it's been getting hectic for us to deal with title issues and stuff like that. So we're going to have a TC just facilitate the back and forth, not the original getting the property under contract, because we can totally do that and do it very quickly. But we're going to have a TC just respond to emails and manage stuff with title. So it's just dependent on what you're trying to do as an individual. Like if you don't know how to write the contracts or if you don't have the contracts yourself, then yeah, using a TC would be great. But then, like I said, there's the trade-off too of do they charge an upfront fee and how long does it take that TC to typically get a contract over to that seller or agent's inbox?
Right. So does it make sense? So like what I said, like basically sending them that purchase and sale agreement for them to sign, which locks them in, and then having the TC at that point come in to do the addendums and everything else they got to do. Does that kind of make sense to do something like that? Because at that point, they'll kind of be locked in, right?
That's what I do. Yeah, that's what we do. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
So I had the right idea then.
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. All right, so I'll think about that one then. I'm just saying, just in case if I come across anything, because I am calling your guys' list, and then I'm running into other agents aside from that. I just want to know. I want to be able to, know what to do in that situation. So yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, totally, for sure. Christian, our TC's contracted out, or so yeah. If we had an in-house one, it'd be super good because then like if someone's in-house, it's like, hey, if we need this done right now, they'll do it right now. Versus if someone's contracted out, it's like, oh, okay, well, I have all these other clients and I'm actually not working today. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. And then, 48 hours pass and you're like, shit, someone else got my deal. Or if some emails are urgent, that's one thing I've always bitched to Alex about wanting to have like an in-house TC so that they're, can be doing stuff like instantly when it needs to be done. Yeah. Any last questions or anything? Oh shoot. I guess it's 11:20. I got to call in 9 minutes. Any last questions or anything from anyone? How would that look on in-house? Well, in-house, you'd have that TC on payroll or salary, and they would just be working for you only. So pretty much there wouldn't be like, oh, I have to pay this person a $600 upfront fee, or, oh, I have to wait 24 hours. Like if that person's in-house on payroll, it's pretty much like, okay, you call them, text them, email them, and they get on it right away and they're getting paid, an hourly base pay for their work. Yeah.
So have they hit on how much you would pay in-house?
I honestly am not 100% sure what we pay an in-house. I have worked with people before who have had in-house TCs on their team. And I think it's just like a basic salary job, like 40, 50 grand a year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I mean, one of the guys I used to work for and close his PPC leads, he has like 400 single family homes and like apartment complexes. He wasn't doing a lot of wholesale deals at all, but you know, when you have that much cash flow coming in monthly, like 40 grand is, not really much to him. And she helps with other things too. So it really just depends on the scale and size of your operation, if you can have an in-house TC or not. And that's something Alex and I do want eventually here in the future, having like an in-house TC.
Right.
But we're just not at that scale yet where we can just say, hey, here's 50 grand a year to do paperwork.
Right. That ain't bad. So 50 grand is the where you'll be at paying them.
That's just my assumption, like just based off like my previous partner. I know that's what he was paying, because I was curious and I was like, what are you paying your in-house TC? And he was doing like just under 50 grand a year, just base salary. We're averaging about 5 deals a month right now. We're having a little bit of a dip now. We've had a handful of deals cancel recently here, and then also kind of the holiday season. Like when I was doing this last year, mainly direct to seller, there was like a huge dip from end of Thanksgiving until the new year, just because people are like not wanting to deal with stuff because of the holidays. It's different though when you're working on market stuff, because the houses are on market, the agents involved. You still might get a lag with response time and stuff, but of course, if there's motivation there, deals will still happen regardless of any time of the year. But that's another thing too we've noticed. Like we have a couple deals we're JVing, trying to dispo and find buyers on Investor Lift, and we've been talking with our partner, and it's slower than normal on that too, because last week was Thanksgiving and we barely got any hits on those properties, and a couple of them look like super solid deals. So seasonality definitely plays a role too in terms of deal flow and whatnot.
Okay. Hey, so let me ask you this. Okay, I deal with wholesalers, right?
Uh,
And agents also sending me leads. Do you want to work them together?
yeah, no, totally. I mean, that's what we're here for. If you're calling on our lists and getting leads that way, like, submitting those leads in through our website and us JVing on them. But of course, like if you're getting leads from other sources too, and you need help closing them and finding buyers and stuff, totally work those together.
Okay. And you got a link I can send it to you?
Yeah. We can. It's actually. Are you in the Discord, Ricky?
Yes, I think I am. I be
Okay.
getting a lot. I'm in for Discord, just to let you know. So,
Gotcha. In our Discord, or I can just drop the website here. But we have a video in like our helpful documents. Or actually, what is it, Alex? What's it called with all our videos that we have, the pre-recorded videos? I'm trying to remember off the top of my head without pulling it up.
A to Z.
Oh yeah. So in that one, the A to Z doc, it'll show you like where you submit leads, everything like that. But then what I just put in the chat, on our website, if it's like, do you have a deal? You can go to the open forum and submit that there, and that's where you should be like submitting, leads through on that form on the website.
Now,
But
would it be interest of you? From I have like they all be on cash, and would there be something y'all be interested in helping too? Like,
their cash deals.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, we are looking for. Let me post the Discord link in the chat too, just in case anyone needs it. That's the thing though. If someone's like, yeah, I'll sell my house cash, like, we have to look. And Alex, I think one thing I want to add to the form when people submit deals is there needs to be, and I think you talked about this, 2 or 3 comps that someone has to submit with their cash deal to justify it being a lead, right? Because if someone just says, yeah, I'll take cash for my house, then that's not a lead. But if you've looked at numbers and you look at a handful of comps and you think there's a spread there, then totally we can submit it and work it together for sure.
Man, be real with you. My email booming. It's from, like you say, you on Investor Live. I'm getting people from Investor Live sending me leads. Then I get companies that have dispo team, as y'all do,